Hello and welcome back to the Consultech Technology Cafe. Today at the cafe we're going to be discussing business continuity and disaster recovery again. We're going to be wrapping up part 2 of a two-part series titled The Disaster Waiting to Happen, the 4 biggest BCDR mistakes people make and why they cost so much. So to quickly review, what is a working definition of IT business continuity? It's pretty simple. Business continuity refers to an organization's ability to keep vital business operations running at or near normal capacities in the event of infrastructure failure. Now, in contrast to that, when we're talking about the disaster recovery half of business continuity and disaster recovery, we're really referring to incidents that significantly impact or make unavailable critical infrastructure. And the most common examples of things that fall into the disaster recovery end of the world are things such as natural disasters and those things that our insurance companies lump into the category of acts of God. So I want to move in and talk about mistakes number 3 and 4. And again, if you're joining us today in the cafe and haven't had a chance to listen to or view the slidecast of part 1 where we covered the first 2 biggest mistakes, no worries, you can go and download those at slideshare.net or just research in Google and find the podcast of that first half if you'd like to. So talk about mistake number 3. And that mistake is not calculating and effectively communicating an accurate impact of downtime. And this is something that we see all the time when we're called in to begin a project with a client. So there's really 5 areas of cost that I really want you to begin to focus on when you try to pull together your BCDR plan. The first of those is the impact on productivity. This would be things such as the number of employees affected, the hours that they're not able to work, kind of lost production time. Depending upon the type of your operation, there may be much more that gets lumped in there, but that's the basic idea. How has this interruption in service impacted your productivity? Next, you need to look at the revenue production that has been impacted. There can be things such as direct loss, maybe a lost future revenue, billing losses, the loss of, or the extra expense perhaps, of having to rebill a second or a third time depending upon exactly what the incident encompassed when you lost and came into an outage situation. Third is, what's the impact on your reputation? Are you losing customers? Will you have lost a customer never to be regained again because of the downtime that you're experiencing? What is the opinion of the local financial markets, the global financial markets? What about how your suppliers view you? Are you no longer a preferred supplier, perhaps, and therefore you're getting a hit on the margin line that you didn't have before? What about other business partners, people on the supply side, people who are affiliated with you? What do those companies think of you now that you've had this incident? It can be very, very important. Next is the impact on financial performance. Revenue recognition, cash flow, lost discounts, payment guarantees, the impact on your credit rating because of this incident. If you're a publicly traded company, what impact has this incident had on your stock price? In some cases, this can be millions and millions of dollars. And then the final category is the catch-all of other expenses. Here you want to make sure that you account for temporary employees that needed to be hired to create that manual workaround when the system was down. Equipment rental, things such as overtime, additional shipping costs if you have to suddenly air freight overnight packages because of the delay that the downtime cost you in processing orders. You lump all 5 of those things together and you come up with the total impact of operational downtime. And it can be a staggering amount of money, an absolutely staggering amount of money. So, why do you need to make sure you calculate it and effectively communicate it? Here's the reason why. If it's unrealistically low, you will not be able to buy the type of solution that you need to truly support your operation. If it's unrealistically high, you'll never be able to sell that amount of funding through the organization. So it really pays you to do your homework and to zero in on the best possible solution for your particular organization. Now, you have the costs that we talked about, but let's just talk very quickly about all the various stakeholders and how you should really look at the organization, and you should really look at your processes. You want to really assess who's going to be impacted. What will be the indirect and direct costs to each of these stakeholders? How quickly will they need their services restored? Where exactly in your organization and in your process map are those critical operations located? Why does someone within the organization deem their specific operation critical? Of course, we all like to think that our operations are critical, but in some cases, the definition of critical, when you really drill into it, is far different from one operation to another. And then finally, really make sure, if you're in an industry where there's government and regulatory compliance, that you account for that. Because again, that can be a very, very expensive mistake. So moving on to the BCDR mistake number 4. It's the one we call creating a one-size-fits-all recovery requirement. Let's have a couple definitions here. First is the term RTO, Recovery Time Objective. The recovery time objective is the maximum allowable downtime after an outage for recovering systems, applications, and functions. Now an RPO, it's P as in Paul, is the recovery point objective. And that's defined by the maximum amount of data that your organization is willing to sacrifice after an outage. A 0 RPO, business continuity solution, can survive a disaster without any loss of data. Now again, as you look at your business processes and you interview your stakeholders, you will likely find out that the RTO and the RPO for various functions within the organization can vary pretty widely. So you need to find a solution that meets everything from don't need a recovery anytime soon, maybe 24 hours of backup is enough, to places within the organization where it's absolutely critical that that RPO be 0. So no loss of data. The RTO is essentially the system never goes down. But it's rarely the case where a one-size-fits-all solution makes sense. To wrap up, let's face it, the world of BCDR, in that world, the stakes are high. International Data Corporation estimates that companies lose an average of $84,000 for every hour of downtime. Strategic Research Corporation puts the figure closer to $90,000 an hour. And yet what we see and what the industry sees is that many enterprises put off implementing enterprise-wide disaster recovery plans until it is too late. So what can you do now? A couple things. By all means, download both white papers that address this topic and get as much knowledge as you can. Within that second white paper, you'll find the link to download our free BCDR calculator that will help you calculate the cost of downtime. It's been a pleasure to have you at the cafe. Look forward to having you back. Until then, goodbye.